Yes, leave a live stream another Wednesday. It's just amazing that our family, our tribe keeps growing and growing. So we have been working in a 9 to 5. So now I want to work from 5 to 9 p.m. to actually build my legacy, and seeing that some wanted to build a non-for-profit, some people wanted to get career progression with our Melbourne VBS, where Achin Georgie Achin was the chief VBS director, and just amazing how much of value he added to the youths and the children. And hence the reason why I could see that he was a Jesus class leader, right from get go, and hence the reason why I've said why wouldn't we have him as a chief guest to our Leave a Legacy live stream. So Achin has a background in clinical psychology, BA in journalism, psychology, and English from Christ University, Bangalore, and he's pursued Bachelor's of Divinity at Mar Thoma Theological Seminary in Kottayam. He was ordained as an Achin in 2014, and for 6 years he served as a youth chaplain of the game Strength, Purpose, and Presence in Today's World. Thank you so much, Achin. Let's all give a big round of Legacy X round of applause to Georgie Achin. A humble, invisible element. So, a metaphor for influence rather than something more visibly powerful. So, why did salt come to your mind first, Acha?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. The idea of being salt of the earth comes obviously from a Christian religious background. It comes from the by Jesus Christ in Matthew chapter 5, in the Sermon on the Mount, what is known as the Sermon on the Mount. There's a verse that he says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, then how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet." So it is an invitation. It's a calling. It's a way of framing your identity and yourself. And I thought um, it is subtle but powerful. There's a story behind it. It is about interpersonal relationships. It's about community relationship. It is about intercultural relationship. Yeah. So here is God sending out an image uh, that we tend to not look at. We look at our lives in many different ways, but looking at our lives in the light of salt, that is something that we tend to not do. So, to answer your question, why not something more powerful? Why not something more visible? And so, uh, we have to go to understand what salt is like. As we all know, salt has primarily three main features. One is to preserve. It preserves food for the long term, especially in different cultures where it's either too hot or too cold. Food is always preserved and it keeps things healthy. We use pickles. So, for leaders, to be the salt of the earth means to take care of the team, for the team back to its feet, especially in times of crisis. Now, the impact of a metaphor like salt lies in the fact that do be there but not be in your face yet have an impact. So that's the reason why I chose this one.
Equivalent of salt of the earth. So basically, how do we be reconcile the quiet, preserving the nature of
Quiet leadership can be very powerful. Me and my wife, both of us are introverts, and we felt okay after first hearing Susan Cain's book, Quiet. The power of introverts in a. I think the title goes in a world that is biased towards extroverts. Quietness has power. It has influence, and people who are not exactly out there ca- catching eyeballs or being loud also have a role, and part of us needs to embrace that fact that some things are all not always upfront before us. There are things that are more subtle, especially in our leadership journey, in our day-to-day life. So um, a lot of work, a lot of things go behind the scenes.
Hmm.
Salt just dissolves into the food and food mix, and you don't even see it, but you know it's there. You know when it's missing too. So leadership that strengthens organizations can also, you know,
Mm.
recently I heard a friend who said, he had to stay back late in the office
Yeah.
and he was just working extra hard and then he had to finish a few things and he had to stay an hour extra. And
Mm.
this is in New Zealand, and his manager said, I'm so sorry you had to work an extra hour. I want you to catch an Uber. We'll pay for it. This is unthinkable in many parts of the world, but the fact that he was cared for by that manager, the manager felt for him, speaks volumes about his leadership and the impact it would have on the employee in the first few days. That is also tremendous, and his in terms of how he will come into the organization or the team as well. So things like these, sensing what are the needs and doing small impactful things, I think it's very important. So it's notable that Jesus used is
Mm.
also the example of yeast that works through the dough, and the whole dough is perfect now for bread with a little bit of yeast, and you don't hear it, you don't see it,
Yeah.
but it happens.
Mm. Mm. I love the concept of quiet leadership, and I think we definitely need more quiet leaders, and especially the ones who spend more time, because in actually hearing their team, so that means they're serving their team, not telling their team what to do. And so it's more about that kind of leadership, which I think the world needs more. So thank you, Achin, for sharing.
I
Uh,
also want to add that we're not just saying that we need quiet leaders and loud leaders. Every leader, I also feel, has a quiet, needs to cultivate a quiet side to them, a subtle side to them, sensing things that may not be apparent in front of their eyes. Um, so within every leader, I think this salt.
every leader needs to make sure that they spend that quiet time with themselves. So again, that thing about self-leadership, right? So unless they spend time to actually meditate and spend time and in their growth journey as well, because growth is something that's really, really important. Because if you don't fill your cup first, then from where are you pouring it out for others? So I think that's important. So I think that's a good point as we talk. And you did mention about metaphors. So why do we need metaphors like salt to talk about leadership? So, for example, what does metaphors allow us to see or feel that direct language might miss, Acha?
Yeah, so we are humans and
Mm.
we are the embodied beings, right? We have a body, we feel, um, we think, breathe in an organic environment. So, number one, many of these things like salt instantly connect with our bodies when we think about it. Secondly, the fact that this is not an abstract example. This is something from the earth, even for Christianity. It's not something that's from outside the world. Jesus used metaphors that are taken from the earth. So in a world when ideas tend to be abstract or um, too technical, um, this comes back to the fact that humans are pictorial and poetic. All humans are pictorial and poetic. We love visuals, we love stories, we love poetry, metaphor, analogy. We understand life better with them. And it also makes a concept accessible to people. So it's the forte of common folk. So
Mm.
you can get to leadership, but the common person understands, right? And salt is something that has remained steady across time, across cultures. So these organic metaphors have been with humanity, so it makes it completely accessible as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is, I think, makes it very relevant for our generation, and especially you're very creative, Acha, and you were recently even sharing. I think a photo from your book saying we need your art. Stop messing around and make something, right? So I think that was also quite ideal for us to always share our creative side as well, and metaphors. It's all part of it. So thank you for sharing, Acha. And also because on that similar question, right? Why, can we use the SALT backgrounds in leadership, education, or community work? You know, the sevenfold ministry.
Yeah, I'm aware that people who watch this podcast or people whom you work with or you network with may not share a religious belief. And of course, salt still communicates to them. However, this idea of salt is set within a religious narrative. So Jesus offers a powerful story for our lives, and if you put this metaphor within that larger story, it has greater impact. That's what I believe. So I would invite anybody who's listening to go check out what's being said before and after this invitation's coming to become the salt of the earth, right? So I feel the narrative has a lot of power. So when you set this idea of salt within the narrative, sending out an encouragement to explore that as well.
Mm, mm. Absolutely. And I think that's the call to action. That is our, because we at Legacy X, we love to have one action point and definitely at the end, Acha, you can definitely share, what is one key advice and one key action point that we can have so that we can share with the team at the end. So now moving on the salt, so there's saltless, there's salted, or they're salty. So what's the difference? Because how do we understand the spiritual and interpersonal implications of these states of saltless, salted, or salty?
Yeah. So thank you. Um, if we use the metaphor of salt, these are states that are connected to salt. So it also reflects upon leadership as well. So you can have a saltless leader. So when you have the right ingredients in your leadership, your effort will have impact. But saltless leadership is effort without impact. So leaders need to reflect, oh, you're putting in a lot of work, you're putting in those extra hours. What is missing and why is the impact not coming? So that analysis um, is required. So saltless leadership will call for a review and reassessment of how could things get better. Salted indicates an attempt to enhance something more than usual. You can have salted nuts. You can have salted um, cashews and things like that. You can use cashews without that as well. But salted is just an enhanced version of it. You enjoy it, but that doesn't mean these things have to be used all the time with salt, right? So salted leadership, the team with some extra attention, maybe extra bits of empowerment, education, learning, extra space to communicate, some extra time to recuperate. So I would say salted leadership would be that where you deliberately enhance. So you can't stretch it all the time where you say, you can, or you can have all the free time in your life. No, but knowing when to add that to enhance a team, that would be what salted leadership for me is. Salty leadership is completely negative for me, which means all leader, no color, right? All leader, no color. Everything sounds, feels like the leader, and there is nothing that sounds, feels, or looks different. Everything should be the color of the leader. So that's when you have where when you wear those tinted glasses and look at the world and see everything in your own, we'll just cast it aside. So salty leadership is something that perhaps we should beware from implementing or following.
Mm, yeah. So I think that's amazing, especially effort without impact. So I think that's really really relevant in these times because, like you said, there's a lot of effort being put, but end of the day, what's the impact? And that needs to actually see through and having those conversations about do you want to be saltless, salted, or salty. So I think that's an amazing way of putting it, Achap. So that's good. And so more on salt. So does salt have an interpersonal dimension? So how does, especially in conflict or in service to the team, to the community, or leadership? So does salt have an interpersonal dimension, Acha?
Indeed, indeed. Indeed, it does. So this is where we take a systemic view of things. Salt is useful when it does what it does in relation to other kinds of food material. So we don't use salt on its own. It's always in relation to other foods. So leadership also does not exist in vacuum. It's always connected to people, a team, organization, multiple groups of people. So it always operates in an interpersonal environment. The salt has the innate ability to kind of bring what it does to a food dish. So leaders bring their leadership capability into relationships with the team, the organization, and the community. So to lose view of the fact that we are working with people, we are working among people, and anything that a leader says or does can have severe or tremendous impact on his team. This is especially I have observed when leadership is hard earned. When leadership is hard earned after much effort, after many years, leaders tend to relax and take it their own way without necessarily thinking about others. The tendency is to think that, let them also work hard because I've worked hard to get this. And sometimes we let our guard down and say things or do things that create wounds in the team. So leadership never exists in a vacuum. So there is always an interpersonal dimension. That's what salt also tells us. Salt is always in relation to a food material, and it enhances when it goes hand in hand with what it's added to.
It's all about that personal relationship. So if it's not enhancing, if it's not adding value, so the salt is not doing its job. And maybe we are becoming too salty. So, so that's a good point that you've raised, Sacha. So, so also again, because we are from the kingdom focus, salt comes from the earth, not heaven. Why does that matter? Because what does that say about the grounded, everyday nature of influence and legacy? Because that's really important that we need to understand from salt coming from the earth but not heaven. And why does that matter?
I find it fascinating that Jesus did not say much about what happens after death. He gave some indications, but we don't have a clear picture. He did not say much about what's going on in heaven for a long time because all his teachings was about life on earth, life beyond earth, etc. But his predominant focus was about our relationships in the here and now, our generations, our life here. So, life on earth is very important, particularly in Christian faith, and our life here in this earth. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So, Jesus using an example from the earth among all the parables and examples that he used, it leads us to think, what does it say about things on earth? So that's
Mm.
where I tend to I'm taught to look at things like the organic nature of salt, the ecological nature of salt, right? Leadership has an organic nature. Organizations, groups, people, they all look for guidance and direction, and it is part of brings trouble to uh, flora and fauna, various kind of living creatures. It's huge, whether it's sea or land, all forms of war, when there's smoke, when there's toxic gases, all of that. So that's just two people fighting with each other who are having different ideologies. So even when communities fight with each other, there's a huge damage that can take place if we, you know, to on the earth. It's a huge toll on the earth. So just look around us, everything that we're doing, all our advancements today in the name of AI, in the name of computers, all of this has a huge toll on nature as well. So if we need AI, we need server houses, server farms, and server farms need cooling. They need electricity. So some server farms use electricity that is used by an entire city for a whole year just to keep it cool. So um, leadership needs to take decisions in those examples. So leadership definitely needs to have an organic commitment to sustain the very earth in which we are living in, and salt brings the fact to that. So this ecological aspect is not something something that many leadership books talk about. But every decision that we make, somehow or the other, has an impact on the environment, and that's something we need to bear in mind. So, therefore, as opposed to heaven, salt comes from the earth. That is very significant, and Jesus' primary examples all talked about things on earth. So, that reminds us earth is something that we need to take care of.
Mm, mm. Yep, that's a good reminder that you've mentioned that the focus, Jesus said, focus is on the earth, but as it is in heaven. So we know that what we are building here, what legacy we are building, definitely will carry forward and go on. So I think that's really amazing, Acha, the way you flavor into leadership as well and making it very relevant through metaphors. So, Acha, what would be your one piece of advice for our legacy? I know we have to wind up. So, one last question. What would be your one piece of advice, especially from you, I would say, walking the walk and understanding that, and what can they do? One key action item or one advice for our legacy ex leaders.
Um, I've got Thank you for the kind words and really appreciate all the kind words that you said. I have a four-pronged one point, which is
Mm,
list, listen, learn, limit. Okay, list, listen, learn, and limit. So listing is assessing ourselves honestly. Make a list. How am I doing? What aspects of my leadership are going well? What is to listen? Every leader needs to commit to listening, keeping your ears on the ground, going beyond your status and talking to everyone and finding out how are things going within our group, within the organization, within the processes of the organization. Third one is to commit to lifelong learning. So that's learning, keep correcting, keep reassessing, and finally limit. Be aware of the areas one needs to say no to,
mm.
assess and decide, or else we become overwhelmed. So we need to learn our limits as well. So list, listen, learn, and limit.
I love it, especially with all the L's, the legacy ex leaders, and all the four L's. Love it, Acha. And how can our leaders get in touch with you? You were mentioning about a blog, so maybe if you don't mind, you could actually put the details below this post in the group because you're part of our family as well.
And the email review. I also have a blog where I try to learn and think, reflect through writing. So they are fully formed thoughts, but I try to write and think. So it's called
Mm.
theologynote.substack.com. So it's on Substack. So it's called theologynote.substack.com. If you subscribe to it, you whenever there's a new post, you'll receive one. So you're welcome to follow that as well. Shameless plug over here.
Yeah, absolutely, Acham. And please feel free to put it here. I'm sure a lot of people, when I shared it to the wider audience, that they're all interested and they're all looking forward to seeing this. And also, it'll be on YouTube, so I'll be sharing that as well. But thank you so much, Acha, for I would say serving, adding that, enhancing that flavor to our group, and always being, especially when we talk about marketplace ministry. There's so many people who really want to jump into ministry, but they are currently in their whatever you could say vocation. But what you just shared is actually being that marketplace minister, and how can they add value, how can they add salt to wherever situations they are. It could be at home, it could be in community, at church, in workplaces. So I think that really added a lot of value. So thank you so much, Achin, for sharing your heart, and really appreciate for you for being part of our Leave a Legacy live stream.
Thank you for having me, and best wishes to Legacy X and all its activities and all those who are being touched by that and empowered by this ministry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Acha. Yes, so I will just